Welcome back, everybody. It is another week. We are not at the barber for over almost 2 months. It's been from before Pesach, but the show must go on. We miss Ilya dearly. My name is Yossi Lolian, and I make videos about Torah and Jewish life. So let's get right into the Parsha. It's Parshas Bamidbar, which means in the desert, because this Parsha, this Sefer, it's in the Sefer, starts off with Moshe Rabbeinu being commanded by Hashem in the desert to count all the Jewish males from the age of 20. It's then followed by the commandment for the firstborn to, quote-unquote, redeem themselves and switch places with the Kohanim, because the firstborn were supposed to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, but they forfeited that when they sinned with the golden calf. And Shevet Levi did not sin, and therefore it was going to be the Kohanim from now on who were going to serve in the Beis HaMikdash. After that, the Parsha discusses when the Jewish people set up camp and when they broke camp, and the carrying of all the utensils of the Mishkan, all the different parts of the Mishkan that was carried by the Leviim. And it also talks about the encampment of the Jewish people, the position of all the Shvatim, of all the tribes, where exactly they were set up within the encampment. That's the Parsha in a nutshell. I just want to take a break to say that everything that we're doing, all the learning, is in the merit of the soldiers at the front lines, the hostages. They should be returned. And for all of Klal Yisrael, for real, true peace in the entire world, and for Mashiach right now. Today we're going to talk about a few things, and we're going to start with Gilgulim, reincarnations. Now, what does Gilgulim have to do with this week's Parsha? Well, the Pasuk discusses the word Legulgulaisam. Now, Legulgulaisam simply means skulls, heads, which means that there was a head count. Right? In English, we say, we count someone, we count people, there's a head count. And literally that means that Moshe Rabbeinu counted all the people who were eligible for counting by their heads. But Reb Menachem Azariah of Pano writes in his Sefer Asar Mamoris that Moshe Rabbeinu knew how many times every soul, every neshama was going to come back in this world as a Gilgul. That the word Gilgulaisam, on a deeper level, means Gilgulim, literal returning in the cycle of a soul coming back into this world. In the Sefer Megala Mukes by Reb Nassan Nata Shapiro, he writes that a Gilgul reincarnation is actually a great kindness by Hashem, that a person is able to come into this world and rectify and fix anything he might have done wrong, or things that he missed out on his original trip down to this world. And what's fascinating is that actually the numerical value of the word Gilgul is the exact same numerical value as the word Chesed, which is 72. I thought that was pretty cool. And both Reb Chaim Vital and the Chida write that in general, a Gilgul is something that happens to men and not to women, as a general rule. Sometimes a woman will come back because of her husband. I guess I'm not actually sure what that means, but my guess is that it means that if, let's say, a woman's husband's soul has to come back into this world, she might have to come back into this world as well. And the Chida actually explains that this is why it says, Kol Zachar Legulgulaisam, that every male, right? Kol Zachar Legulgulaisam, every male by their Gilgul, right? What that means simply is that the males were counted, because the women were not counted in the desert. But the Chida says that actually this also hints to the fact that it is males that have reincarnations in general and not female. And since we're already talking about Gilgulim, there is the well-known question, which is which body is going to come back by Tchias HaMesim, right? When Hashem revives the dead, which body is it going to be? Is it going to be the first body? Is it going to be the last body? And there are different opinions. The Beis Yosef writes that every single body that the neshama was ever in is going to be brought back for Tchias HaMesim. Because every single body that neshama was in was Mekayim mitzvahs, they fulfilled mitzvahs, and therefore they're going to be brought back. But since it's the last body that fulfilled the mission that it was supposed to, meaning right, every single time the soul comes back into this world, it's to fix something. The last time the soul comes into this world it's the last time because finally the soul had reached completion. and completion of its mission. So because of that, the last body is going to be brought up first, and then the others will follow. The Sifsei Kohen writes something similar, and he says that it can't be that a body was created only to be left dead forever, because since there is no such thing as a soul not benefiting from being in a body, because there's no body that hasn't done a mitzvah, regardless of how many mitzvahs or how good or the opposite the person was, he for sure did a mitzvah, he for sure did mitzvahs in his life, and the soul had some benefit from it, and therefore it's going to come back for Tchias HaMesim. It's possible because it's, as it says, Ner Havai Nishmas Adam, that the soul is likened to a candle. When you light from one candle to another, the first candle's light is not diminished. It just adds and adds and adds, and the same thing is possible with a soul. The Divrei Yoel, the Yoel of Satmar, says that the neshama can, break up into sparks, so to speak, and therefore, when Mashiach comes, it's going to come out that since all the bodies are going to come back, so therefore you're going to have so many Jews, because for every single time that a soul came back, you never know how many times it is, and therefore the original souls have been in this world a bunch of times, and since they're going to be, so to speak, separated into different bodies, so that means there's going to be countless Jews, an unimaginable number by Tchias HaMesim. Now the Abarbanel writes that it's going to be the first body. The Arvi Nachal, who is Reb David Shloime Eibshitz, he writes that it's going to be the last body, and that it's the last body that's going to inherit all of the mitzvahs, all of the good deeds that was done by all the bodies before it. And he kind of writes like it's a shame for all the other bodies that will never, be brought back for Tchias HaMesim. This is I don't know if this is appropriate to say, but it seems like the wildest of them all. And this is from Rabbi Yitzchak of Berditchev. He says that he says like this, that it's known that there's a argument between the Mekubalim, the Kabbalists, and the Mechakrim, and the philosophers. The Mekubalim say that it's going to be the first body, and the philosophers say it's going to be the last body. But really, it's going to be somewhere in between. And he explains it like this. Because the body is made up of 613 parts, there's 248 limbs, and 365 gidim. I think the way to say that is sinews, but I'm not sure. So the body is made up of 613 parts, and every time the neshama comes into this world, it is completing. It's giving all the different parts of the body its vitality, its completion. And therefore, if, let's say, a soul did not complete its mission, so therefore there are parts of it that's missing. And so it comes again. And when it comes again into the next body, then it does, or is at least the goal is that it should do whatever it missed. And so over a span of however many bodies it might be, it could be 3, 5, 10, who knows, the body gave itself the vitality, the part of it vitality, wherever it accomplished its mission. And so when Mashiach comes, every single body part that corresponds to the mitzvah that was done is going to come back. So which means that really it's going to be different parts of different bodies, whatever was, so to speak, incomplete because it didn't accomplish it in whatever lifetime won't come back. And the ones that were will come back. So that means it's going to kind of be, it's going to be coming together from all the different bodies, depending on if in that lifetime of that body, it had completed and fulfilled the mitzvah that corresponds to that particular body part, which seems so wild and is a really big chiddush. I just want to quote a few words that he said. How is he going to come back? How is it going to be a combination of all the bodies? Through this, that all of the complete limbs will come together, will be brought together. So that's a pretty interesting thing. And just want to bring one more thing about Gilgulim from the Arizal. He says that nowadays, the fact is that there are a lot of mitzvahs that we can't do. There are karbanos we never did. There are different things that we have no way of doing them. So we do it to the best of our ability nowadays by learning about them, by speaking of them. Right? That's why we say karbanos in the morning. Prayer is for the karbanos. But there are many things, many mitzvahs that we can't do because we're in galus. And the Arizal says that when Mashiach comes, there's also going to be this idea of Gilgulim, that the neshama will then be able to fulfill the mitzvahs that it missed out because it was in galus. Now, one more thing from the Parsha. The Ramban says that one of the reasons why the Yidden were counted and why they were counted by their names, it was so that, these are the words, Kidei sheyasimu alehem ayin toiva, inayim einam letoiva, yivakshu alehem rachamim. It says that in order they should they should place upon them a good eye, and they'll request for them mercy. And Rabbi Yekusiel Yehuda Halberstam, the Rebbe, one of the Rebbeim of Tzanz Klesenberg, says that it's known that this is a Rebbe Ramban. That from here is the source that you give a pan, you give a kvittel, you give a pidyon nefesh to a Rebbe with your name and your mother's name, and that the tzaddik should pray on your behalf. He should give a bracha, facilitate brachas from heaven for you. So I just thought that was an interesting thing, that this Ramban is perhaps the source of going to a Rebbe, going to a tzaddik, and asking for brachas. Okay, on to the Haftarah. So the thing I love about the Haftarah is that very, very often it mentions, the Haftarah will mention, obviously it will mention something that has to do with the Parsha, some connection to the Parsha, which we're going to talk about, but also very, very often, I think almost always, it alludes to the Geula, the redemption from Mashiach, when Mashiach will come, and the amazing things that are going to happen. And this Haftarah is no exception. I just want to first highlight what the connections of the Haftarah to the Parsha is. So number one, in this Parsha the Jews are counted, and in this Haftarah it mentions how the Jews are going to be so much that it's going to be pretty impossible to count them. Also, this week's Parsha is Bamidbar, and in the Haftarah it mentions the Jews being brought through the Midbar, that Hashem is going to, bring us back to Him through the Midbar, which is, going through the desert after Hashem. It requires trust in Him and thereby seeing miracles from Hashem. So, since this Parsha's name is in the desert, and this Haftarah also mentions us going through the desert and trusting in Hashem. And last but not least, it says in this Parsha, Rashi brings down that they brought their documents, they brought proof of their family tree, right, their lineage. And in this Haftarah, Hashem says that the Yidden are His sons. So that's the greatest lineage possible, to be children of Hashem. So these are the three connections of the Parsha to the Haftarah. And Hashem also speaks of us as His wife, because the relationship between us and Hashem is like a husband and a wife, which is an inseparable bond, which is one of the closest bonds ever. The Haftarah is from the Sefer Hosea. He's one of the Treyasar, the 12 Nevi'im. Hosea had Nevuah at the same time as Yeshayahu, Amos, and Micha. He was the oldest of them all, and he also had the longest Nevuah. He, I think, had Nevuah for 90 years. And Hosea was rebuking the Yidden, telling them to stop worshipping idols. There's actually a previous parsha that is also brought from Hosea, which is along the lines, Parshas Vayetze, which is from a while back. And I'm just going to highlight the main things that are going on in the Haftarah. There's 4 things that are going on. Number one, it starts with the brachos. Hosea starts with brachos that the Jews are going to receive in the future, which also are sort of happening today, which we'll get into. It also talks about the different sins of the Jewish people at the time, and it talks about the punishments, and then it finally ends off with an unbreakable bond that we are forever connected to Hashem and it's never going away. And as a preface to this, why is Hosea blessing the Jewish people? So the reason is because of this. Before the words of this Haftarah, Hashem had spoken to Hosea and said that the Jewish people are sinning. And what he should have said was, they're your children, they're the children of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who were forever loyal to you, and in their merit, you have to have mercy on them and still show them love. Instead, because Hosea himself was not very happy with the idolatrous ways of many of the Jews in that generation, so he said, Hashem, you own the whole world, you can just switch them with another nation. And Hashem did not exactly like that answer, because at the end of the day, the Jewish people, even the sinners, were in a much better place than even the more righteous of the other nations. And at the end of the day, we're His children, right? We're Hashem's children. We're the sons of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, and we're His nation. So Hashem didn't just tell him off. Hashem, this is very interesting what happened. Hashem tells Hosea to marry a harlot, a promiscuous woman. He marries her, and he goes on to have 3 children with her. Now, the first child, Hashem says to name Yisrael, because that means that the Jews will be dispersed. The second child was a girl, and Hashem told him to call her Lo Yeruchama, who will not be pitied, will not have mercy on, because the Jewish people will not be treated with mercy. These are negative decrees for the Jewish people. The third child was a boy, and Hashem told him to call him Lo Ami, not my nation, because unfortunately many of the Jews were not acting like the nation of Hashem because they were serving other gods. And then Hashem tells Hosea to divorce his wife. And Hosea doesn't want to, because he says, I have children with her. And the children will suffer as well, because people will say that they're not my children, because she's a promiscuous woman and I'm not even with her. The children will suffer. They won't have a father to be with them, to protect them. So Hashem says, look, you're married to a woman who is not exactly, doesn't have exactly the best reputation. And you have mercy on children who you don't even know whose children they are. You don't for sure know. And yet, what did you tell me? You told me about the Jewish people who are the children of Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, who were loyal to me. And you said I should just switch them with someone else. And at that point, Hosea realizes his error. And he asks Hashem for mercy. He realized he really did the wrong thing. And Hashem says, don't ask for mercy for yourself. Ask for mercy of the Jewish people. I just made 3 decrees against them. So he does. And Hashem agrees to push off the punishment until the next generation. It was going to be that generation, pushes it off to the next generation. But Hosea wants to do more. He feels like he still owes a debt to the Jewish people. And so Hashem gives him a prophecy, a nevuah, that reveals that all the names that were given, which show negative decrees against the Jewish people, are going to be transformed and switched over to being actually blessings and positive things. And that's in the first 3 psukim. You see the names that are mentioned. You have Yisrael is mentioned, but it's talking about where it meant that the Jews will be dispersed. Here it talks about the gathering of the dispersed. It also says, instead of Lo Ami, it says V'la'achechem, and to your brothers call Ami, my nation. B'nei Kel Chai, call them the children of the living God, and to your sisters call them Ruchama. That she is pitied. There will be mercy for her. So it changes all that. And it also says, right, that the Jewish people will be like the sand. And in these psukim, there's a comfort that even though there is hardship and there's golus, now we know that in the future it's all going to be switched over and we're going to so to speak, run into Hashem's arms, and we're going to be together with Him again openly. And the Malbim says that some of those blessings are already happening today, even though we're still in Golus, and those blessings are for the future, for the Geula. But even now they're happening. We're seeing that even though we're in Golus, the Jewish people are all over the world, and it's very hard to count exactly what our number is. And not only that, but our existence itself is a miracle. So there are miracles happening. Hashem is with us, right? We see right now the existence of Israel, all the people who want us dead, all the people who are against us, and yet Hashem is protecting us with all the unfortunate tragedies. Every single life lost is a real tragedy. But we see the absolute miracles that are happening right now. It's undeniable. And throughout history, our survival is an absolute miracle. There's no explanation for it. According to naturally, we shouldn't exist, and yet here we are. And the analogy of sand doesn't just talk about numbers and our quality, but also talks about but it's actually an analogy which you can. There's also other things about sand that we're compared to. For example, the waves of the ocean are always beating against the shore, trying to overtake it. And nevertheless, Hashem created the world in a way where the water always has to return and stay in its place. And the same thing is that throughout the history, many nations have tried to destroy us, and no matter what, Hashem has made sure that they stay in their place and that they can't do it. And number two, even when, for whatever reason, God decides that they should have the power to destroy many of us, we're like the sand in the sense that just like when there's a hole in the sand, by the next morning the wind already blows the sand where that hole is covered. So too, even no matter how much we're beaten down, we come back and we fill that spot again, and we see so many times. And the most recent time was after the Holocaust, where people rebuilt their lives and succeeded and are standing out till today. And we just won't stop, and we just won't give up, and we just won't die. And that's something which is also there's irrefutable proof that the Jewish people have a resilience, and that's just like sand, that no matter what we always come back, we always bounce back. Now, the last thing I want to mention is from Pirkei Avos. In this week's Pirkei Avos, the 6th parak, Perek Shishi, it brings down the pasuk that speaks about the luchos, that they're michtav elikim, right? The writing of Hashem, charus ala luchos, was engraved on the luchos. And Pirkei Avos says, the Mishnah says, Al tikra charus ela cheros. Don't read it as engraved, but freedom. That nobody is free except for the person who learns Torah. Ela misha oisek b'Torah, someone who is involved in Torah. And there's something deeper here. How does Torah bring freedom to a person? Only when it's charus, when it's engraved, in a way where it's not separable from the person himself, right? Writing, ink on parchment, even very good ink, can be scratched off. It's not actually one with the material itself. It's added on. But engraving is part of it. And the same thing is, there's different ways that a person can take in Torah. It could be Torah where it hasn't become part of him. But there's a deeper way of internalizing Torah where it becomes part of you and it's not separate from you. And when that happens, when it's one with you, so then the Yetzer Hara and all different types of hardships or trials or tribulations that a person will go through, they won't faze him because he has this special freedom that's given to him from internalizing the Torah. And that's also why it doesn't say Elo mi shalom Torah. It doesn't say that nobody's free except someone who learns Torah. It says someone who is involved in Torah. One of the uses for the word asek of involvement is business. When a person is so involved in his personal business, he thinks about it day and night. It's not something which he does occasionally or he does part of the day. It entirely consumes him. And it's the same thing when the Torah consumes a person, when it takes up his entire being, that's the type of internalization of Torah that's going to protect him from all the different things in this world that can be undesirable, that could be difficult. And it gives him this freedom and places him above all those things because Torah is so part of who he is. So yeah, maybe we merit to that. That's it for this week, guys. If you made it to the end, you're an absolute legend. Please do me a favor. Smash the like button. If you're not subscribed, please subscribe. It helps a lot. And share this with your friends. Let's help grow this channel. Comment below. I would love to connect with you guys to get to know more of you. And welcome to all the new subscribers once again. And yeah, good Shabbos.